So I'll just start off with so Jessica, if you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself and then what got you interested in screenwriting.
Sure. So, really, ever since I was 6, I've always loved just creative writing. I didn't know I wanted to be a screenwriter at that point, but I knew I wanted to be a storyteller, a creative writer. And by the time I got to high school, I would write just in my journals for fun. I would come up with different stories, and my friends and I, like, they thought it was just great because they would act out my stories. They would make a, like, not really a game of it, but it was entertaining for them. And I became just the writer of my friend group. And I always hung around with a lot of artsy people. Like, a lot of my friends were, they were heavily into anime. They were
Mhm.
into like drawing, painting, fashion design. So I was always very artsy. I also love painting, but I'm not good at it. I just do it like more for relaxation, but writing is really my strength. And that's how I got into it.
And then when did you know that screenwriting was going to be sort of your journey?
I think I knew by the time I was 18 because, like, well, actually, no, I take it back. Maybe like 16 because when I would watch TV, it was just the craziest thing. I would automatically know certain lines that of dialogue that characters would say from a movie or a TV show, and I would have never seen the movie before. Like, oh yeah, he's gonna say such and such, and I'd be like, wow, he said that. I'd be like, wow, he said it. Like even now, I'm like, wow, and I mean, I look back and it makes sense because I used to watch so much TV with my grandma. Like, we would watch all these shows and we would watch all these movies, and I would be asking questions like, why is he doing this? Why is he saying that? Why did he react like that? And now I look back on it like, that's screenwriting. We want to know the answer to that. Like, what's motivating this character? And by the time I got to just undergrad college, I didn't take a screenwriting class until my junior year because they didn't really have a real screenwriting film department. So at that time, I was just majoring in writing in general. But that intro to screenwriting course gave me at least the basics, create a character that wants something. And it was 2011. I was so green back then. I remember I had no idea about screenwriting software. I didn't know what Final Draft was or even Celtex, and I I would never recommend anybody do this. It's a headache. I tried to write a screenplay in Microsoft Word. Don't ever
Ouch.
do that. It's the most tedious, like, you can, but it's so tedious. Like, it's not even worth it. And I've even had to turn down like clients because they'll ask me, like, oh, is there no way you can do it in Word? I said, listen, I don't care how much money. Like, no, I was like, can I do it in Final Draft or any other screenwriter? They were like, no, I want you to do it in Word. I'm like, you're gonna have to find somebody else. I
Absolutely.
just can't do it. I was like, they're like, I'll pay. I'm like, I appreciate that, but no, it's not even worth the headache. Like, that's just the biggest. I mean, you got to figure out what margin goes here and it just takes you're not even worried about the story anymore. At that point, you're worried about which margin is slightly off.
Absolutely.
It's too
Absolutely.
much.
Yeah, especially when they have all this nice software, even free software.
Yeah, like I even tell my clients, like, if you're on a budget at the moment, because I did this too. Once I found out about Celtex, I used it for about a year and a half. And then when I went into my grad school program, which was an art school, that's why I was in San Francisco, and that was strictly like screenwriting. And that's when I knew, like, okay, I need to get Final Draft, I need to invest in this. And I've stuck with them ever since.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Final Draft definitely is a great program. I've used that as well too. It's really pretty
Oh
good.
yeah, I need to try Movie Magic because I've heard great things about them too. I've just never tried it.
So Movie Magic, like I said, I've used a lot of software. Uh, It's not the software that makes a screenwriter, though. I'll tell you that. It's
True.
but the movie magic is nice. It's about the same price. They have a lot of other additional programs you can get that I found really helpful when I was writing. But they're also very expensive. So you could spend like $800 to $900 on all the different suites when you put together everything with Movie Magic.
Really?
Yeah, it's you
Wow.
don't have to. Like I said, you don't have to, but I just found it very helpful. But when I
An
was buying it was back in the day where it was really cheap.
Oh yeah, that's true. Because even Final Draft for the most part, it's what, like 2.99 at the most.
Yes,
Not even that bad. Because I mean, I feel like Final Draft could be worse. Like they could charge like 900 and something or 500. You know what I mean?
absolutely. Absolutely. Since they're the industry standard, I mean, the industry standard is PDF, but I mean,
Well,
they're the
yeah.
ones that everybody, when you go to a writing room, that's what they tend to give you is final draft. So,
Yeah, that's pretty much what they do. I mean, they'll accept movie magic, but like, I mean, I've even had to tell my clients, like, okay, it's time to graduate from cell text. They're like, but the money. I'm like, listen, it's an investment. Like,
and what I was just sort of thinking about that as well too. So when you got done with your undergraduate degree
mhm.
and you decided to go to your graduate degree, so did you sort of feel that sort of calling after your screenwriting class to go into to
Oh
graduate
yeah.
studies? Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I mean, at first I wanted to be a TV writer, and this is the thing I tell a lot of young people, and I'm grateful that I learned this, not too late. I was about 25 when I figured this out. I'm 31 now, but let's see. So at first I was working towards, becoming a TV staff writer. I'm working my way up. So I was sending my stuff to competitions. I ended up winning one. I had an agent look at it, but it was a budgeting issue because it was a period piece, and you know how with the budget they're like super strict. And I was asking him, is it the story itself, could I fix it? And they were like, no, the writing is good, it's just the budget, we just can't. They're going to be like, oh, it's a period piece and costume and location and all that stuff. But around that time, this is when I was still like working a job and going to school still. And I was in LA at that point. But then I ended up, and this is so random. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it now because Craigslist has changed.
Mhm.
But have you heard of Coverfly?
Yes, I've used Coverfly before. Yes.
Yeah, I ended up working with them in 2016, and let's see, I found them randomly on Craigslist. Now, I didn't even know who they were at the time, that they were even a script coverage service. All I saw on Craigslist was the headline, script coverage service needs script readers. And I had gotten experience from, internships doing that for production companies. So I had expertise in it. And I mean, they pay really well. That they don't skimp their readers at all. And I worked for them for a while, and that's when I realized I was really good at giving notes because my bosses, they would tell me, "Oh, such and such loved your notes. They were going to request you again." And, "Oh yeah, they're going to request you." I mean, but it was just kind of impersonal though, because I could never really talk to the client directly. It was like, my boss would be the go-between.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And also with Coverfly, it taught me a valuable lesson too. One, it taught me what my real calling was, to be in development and to really help other writers. And it aligned better with my life plan instead of being a TV staff writer. And there's nothing wrong with it. But the thing is, being a TV staff writer, you have no life. You get paid well, but you have no life. And I have clients that are TV staff writers, and I'll ask them, "How is the writers' room?" And they're like, "I want to get out."
Yeah.
And I
Yeah, I
mean, the
think
pay is good. Don't get me wrong, but it's a grind. I was talking to another script consultant. I don't know if you follow her. She's great. The Professional Pen.
No, I don't think I do.
Oh, she's awesome. She's actually the first Black woman to own her own agency in Hollywood.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's been in it like I think she's got like 10 years on me. She's been at it for a while, but she's great. She's really, really great. But she was telling me, yeah, I tell my clients all the time that it's a grind, that like it's one thing where you're writing for this show and you're expected to churn out episodes week after week after week, but
Mhm.
then you're still a writer in Hollywood, so you have to keep building your portfolio, and it's that balance. And then if you have a family, it can be tough, and if you have kids and you're married, like it can just be a lot. I mean, and that's why I was like, let me just have my own business doing this so I can set my hours.
Well, that's why I'm a movie. That's why I'd write movie scripts because I don't want to
Exactly.
do all that
The
extra.
writer's room. No.
Yeah. I just
And
want to
when
do
you're
my
young, you're
story.
not thinking about that. You're not thinking about like work-life balance. But then I realized, wait a minute, I made really good money from Coverfly and I didn't have to leave my house. Like, and
Absolutely.
then it clicked, because I had never thought about being an entrepreneur and starting a business because no one in my family, I mean, they're educated, but they're not like business owners. So I
Mhm.
really had nobody to really look at, which is why next month I'm going into a coaching program with a business mentor because I don't know what I'm doing. I suck at branding and marketing, so I need that completely.
Well, and I think that's sort of what it's sort of like in some sense, it's sort of like screenwriting. It's a team effort, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we learn a lot from, if you, even I would imagine from the time you were doing your internship, I mean, you worked with a group of people and it's sort of the same thing with business. I sort of think it's sort
Oh,
of,
yeah.
you know, I think a lot of people just sort of think screenwriting is just, you just typing away and they don't realize that, there's, a lot of times your writing is going to change
Mm-hmm.
because, especially with TV writing, they want you to do something different. So,
Oh, yeah. And people don't realize, like, one of my clients, and this was back in like early 2021, he had me speak to his college screenwriting class because he's a professor at the University of Central Florida. And I was like, oh, yeah, let me tell them, you have to think about your life plan. Like, do you want to work from home or do you just really want to be in the writer's room? Because you have to really know the type of life that you want to pursue. And I wish someone would have told me that. I mean, luckily I figured it out before it was too late. But I mean, imagine being like 40 years old and you're in the writer's room and you're going, oh my God, I have no life. Like,
absolutely. Absolutely. No,
I'm
that's
making a
real.
lot of money, but I can't enjoy it.
Absolutely. What other advice would you give to new screenwriters?
I would tell them to really focus on honing in their original voice because I mean, I've been guilty of this too, being a new screenwriter and being so anxious to like hit it big and get an agent and get staffed. But what I find is that a lot of writers don't focus on the craft itself at first. They're just like, how do I get an agent? How do I get a manager? And it's like, before you get those people, you have to have something to show them. You have to have a portfolio. You have to have like a genre that you really want to represent you. And it's not to say that you'll be boxed into that forever, but initially coming into the industry, they have to know how to market you, how to sell you. And if they don't know that and you say, oh, I write everything, it confuses them. And they're like, well, if you write everything, we don't really know what your strength or weakness is. So we don't really know where to put you. We don't know if you write like TV crime dramas. We don't know if you write sitcoms. We don't know if you write like period pieces, historical dramas. We don't really know what your brand is and what your core wound is, even as a writer.
What would you say when you're talking about this, what would you say is your genre then?
I would say that my genre, it's actually two that I enjoy. It's period pieces because I love just going back into history and learning how people operated during that time period. And
Mhm.
then also I do enjoy like crime dramas, like murder mysteries and stuff like that, because it's just so interesting to where you don't see it coming and there's all this build up and suspense, and I enjoy creating that.
Cool. Awesome. Let's see. What have you found brings you the most enjoyment being a screenwriter?
Just the ability to create a different world, just to use your imagination and, not be stifled so much. Because that's one thing that, and I'll be totally honest, that I don't love about the school system, how by the time that most kids get to fifth grade, they've had all the creativity kind of stomped out of them
Hmm.
to the point where if you ask them to like use their imagination, it's confusing to them because it's like, wait, what? I thought I just had to memorize and just get one right answer. But when there's more than one right answer, they get confused. So I think that's what I love about screenwriting, that two things can be true at the same time. And you still have to have story logic, but you're still able to create and not censor yourself. And you can also tell stories that have meaning.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I agree with you totally. I mean, that's one of the reasons I enjoy screenwriting as well too, is just being able to tell those stories. What's your what's your dream with screenwriting? So if you could do if you could snap your fingers and be where you're at, want to be at with your screenwriting, what would you where would you be at?
Honestly, I would do movies. Movies I wouldn't mind because then I wouldn't have to be quote unquote in a writer's room. I would just have to, revise and then also meet with the producers as needed to like get their notes and stuff like that. So definitely movies. I'm actually working on writing a novel right now, and I also want to take my business to the next level in terms of development and ghost writing and of course like script development notes and just everything else that I offer.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, no, I like that type of question because I think a lot of people are always just sort of stuck in the here and now, and to be able to have, I think a lot of people don't have that wider vision. So it's neat to hear where you'd like to be at. So I think it's always, and then it's always fun to figure out how do you reverse engineer that back to where you need to be at.
Yeah, I'm so guilty though of like thinking too far ahead. It's kind of a weakness. My mom will be like, Jess, like you're thinking way ahead. I'm like, I know, I can't help it. Like
Well, I think that's good though. I think like I said, I think a lot of people tend to just have that short term outcome. Okay, we'll get this scene done, but they don't look ahead and say, okay, so
right. So
you
what's
know,
the end goal?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that's something that people need to look at. What's that end goal? And I think that's people just think they got to write a script and that's it. And it's like there's a lot of more pieces to that. So
Right. And also, I'm glad you said that too, because a lot of people they think like, oh, I just need one script and that's it. And I'm like, no, you need to like at least have like 5+ scripts in your portfolio. I mean, I've even had people try to argue with me when I tell them that. And I'm just like, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I was like, I mean, I even had, if you can believe it, which is why I don't do like free one-on-one sessions anymore, like for, like a free 15 minute, which I used to when I first started out. But now I've just been getting too many quote unquote like weirdos. I had one person book a Zoom call to argue with me about how you don't need to have an inciting incident within the first 10 pages. And I said to her, yeah, you do. And she, no, not if I'm writing a feature. I'm like, yeah, you do. I'm like, and then she was like, well, I'll figure out if I want to work with you. And I'm like, no, and in my head, I'm going, I've decided for you. No, no. And at that point, I was like, I'm not offering free 15-minute consults anymore. There's too many weirdos.
Yeah, and I think that's, well, I think the one thing that I figured out over my period of time is that um, you really figure out if you're going to be a screenwriter if you actually write. Because how many people just come with you with the ideas? Hey, I don't know about you, but I get this all the time. People come up to me and say, hey, I got this great idea for a screenplay. And I said, great, you write it. And they look at me like, well, no, that's what you do. And I'm like, no, that's your idea. You
Right.
write it.
I mean, now if I'm ghostwriting for them, that's a little bit different. Like
Yeah.
right now, I have a client to where I'm ghostwriting his book, but it's a series. So he already has the first two books written. So I'm helping him with the third, and he gave me his character list. I mean, that's different.
Right.
But I
Right.
mean, if they're coming to you, oh, I have an idea. And I'm like, well, do you want me to ghostwrite it? Well, no. I'm like, well, then are you going to write the screenplay? What? And I'm like, oh gosh.
Absolutely.
They
Absolutely.
think it's a get rich quick thing.
Yeah.
It's
And
not.
it's a grind. I think that's the thing
Yeah, you have to
that
love it.
absolutely, absolutely, because there's going to be times. Well, let's so tell me a little bit more about the because I want to come back to the script competition you won. So
Yeah.
when you did that script, I'm assuming you had to rewrite that a number of times.
Oh my God. So that script, that was my first feature that I ever wrote. And that was when I was in grad school. And my professor, oh my gosh, I'm so sad though, because he passed away about a year after I graduated. He had pancreatic cancer, but he was the head of the department and he had been in the industry for like 20 plus years. So he was one of the like OGs of the industry. That man was so tough on me in the beginning. He was like, take that out, take that. I must have revised that thing like 13 times. So by the time I sent it to that competition, I was done with school at that point. So I knew, like, okay, it's ready. It's ready to go. If I keep sitting on it at this point, this is just because I'm nervous.
Yeah, it's and so sort of talk because you went through more the formal education route. I've been running into a lot of people who haven't taken a lot of classes or stuff like that. What would you suggest for people who are sort of self-taught screenwriters like myself?
Yeah.
What type of schooling or classes or resources have you found to be the most useful?
I would say honestly, like you don't even necessarily have to go the traditional route. I would recommend somewhere like Script Anatomy. Have you heard of them?
I think I have. I think I have.
Yeah. I've actually taken a class with them because I'll be honest with you, my grad school was good, but I felt like I didn't get enough with TV writing. And
Okay.
when I went with Script Anatomy, they gave me even more because the cool thing about Script Anatomy is it's staff writers that are currently in writers' rooms teaching you.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're currently like already in Hollywood. They're already writing for a TV show that's on the air, and they show you how to outline like the A, B, C, and D story. And my concentration was more the 1 hour drama. So I took that class. I think it's called Televisionary, and they showed me how to outline because that's another thing. Outlining a TV show is so different than outlining a feature. It's
That's very true.
totally different.
Yeah, that's what I've been. One of the things also I've talked about, or in a previous interview I've done with somebody too, and he talked about the same tune too. Is you got to really figure out: are you going to write for TV or are you going to write for movies?
Mhm.
Because they're not those same thing.
No. And I mean, I'll admit, my professor in undergrad, he did tell me TV is where the money is. And that's true because it's a writer's medium. And movies, they're more like a director's medium. And then you have like reality TV, and that's a producer's medium. So it's a lot, but I see why a lot of people go the TV route, but then I also see why people choose movies because it's like, listen, I want to have a life.
Yeah, and I really appreciate those words of wisdom because I think a lot of people when they get in the screenwriting again, they just see like, well, I'll make a ton of money, but they don't realize if you're going into TV writing, you're not going to have a life with that money. And then when you go into the
Right.
script, if you go into movie writing, it's it's more hit or miss.
Yeah, I would say to anybody going into movie writing or even TV too, because the show could get canceled, unfortunately. And a lot of people don't talk about that. And that's why, a lot of TV writers, if you speak with them, they'll tell you, you get paid a lot, but don't be quick to go out like right away and buy a luxury car because you don't know. Like that show could be up one day and it could be gone tomorrow. And I mean, I've seen so many shows that are great. And then I'm like, oh, let me watch it. Come to find out it's canceled.
Yeah,
And it's like, that was a good show, though. But, the ratings, the
absolutely.
budget.
Yeah, and it could be any of it. It could be any of that, or the network just didn't like it, or
Yeah.
their streaming service didn't like it, or
Hmm.
you know,
It could be a lot. And then also, I don't know if you heard about this. Well, I'm sure you already know about this, but they're still paying like writers assistants in the industry less than 50,000. It's
yep,
insane.
yep,
It is so crazy. I was just like, with the cost of living in LA, and people keep asking me because I have friends in LA. They're like, oh, would you ever move back? I said, listen, I love it there. I love the weather, but I just can't do it.
yeah. No,
Even
it's
like when I get my business to where I want it to go, like I've even talked to a few of my business mentors and they told me to move to the South because it's cheaper. And I don't blame them. Like my mom and I were even talking, like, yeah, we want to move to Texas at some point.
yeah, it's a little warmer, and then like I said, yeah, it's
It's
hopefully not as
cheaper.
expensive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I'm in Maryland. I'm near like where the DC area is. It's high here too. But LA, I mean, the entertainment industry, they should be ashamed of themselves. Like, you know how much work writers' assistants do?
yeah,
It's
they
a
do a
lot.
lot. Yeah, and they don't get recognition for it, and yeah, it's yeah, they don't do a very good job of paying their employees.
They really don't. I mean, it's just crazy. And then they expect them, well, with the promise that you'll make it and you'll end up becoming a But it's like, how do we know that though?
Right.
And I know
Exactly.
that, that's probably what they really want to do. But then it's like, will it ever happen? Because I read one article. There was one girl, she had been a staff writer for about, not a staff writer, a writer's assistant for about 8 years and they still hadn't offered it to her. So they were just using this girl for like
Yeah.
labor, like cheap labor at that point. I'm just like, I mean, how many more years does she have to put in to prove that she's loyal? Like,
Yeah.
she's already given you 8 years, and really it should have been maybe a year and a half.
Yeah, so that's good
Like,
for any for the writers who are listening to this too, is just to know that, when you first get in the door, if you're not making progress within a couple of years, you need to really reevaluate your stuff, because you're
yeah.
not make sure you're not getting taken advantage of.
Yeah, and that's another thing I learned too with Coverfly. Now, they never took advantage of me. They paid me my worth, but like the thing with them, it taught me to always have your own because when you work for Coverfly, and this is for anyone who eventually ends up working for them, it's great experience. I highly recommend it, but it's not like a full-time permanent job. And at the time, I didn't understand that because I was what, like 25, so I didn't understand like, oh, it's a contract position. And so I was like getting all this, all these assignments. I would log in, and the cool thing about them, you get to pick what screenplay you want to do coverage on. You get to look at the log line like, ooh, that's interesting. I'll pick that one. Ooh, that's interesting. And they show you the pay. I mean, it's nice. And so I go on there. This is around like March of 2018.
Mhm.
And then there's no assignments. And so I'm like, okay, maybe there's just nothing there at the moment. I check on Tuesday, Wednesday, still nothing. Thursday, nothing. Then Friday, I'm like, okay, let me email my boss. And I said, hey, what happened? There's no assignments. And he was like, oh, your contract ended. And I'm like, I mean, you could have told me. Like, I mean, he was like, you did a good job. I mean, it wasn't like I was fired, but it was just
Right.
kind of like, you could have told me. But then that showed me I need to create my own.
Absolutely.
So it
Absolutely.
was a tough lesson, but it was a good learning lesson, or else I wouldn't have had my business. I would have just been complacent.
What what other resources would you say that beginning writers should take a look? Coverfly is I did a video on that real quickly for people to look at. What other websites or other types of resources would you recommend people to start looking at and to get into?
Let me see. Also, let me see. Definitely, this is a book that I highly recommend, The Hollywood Standard.
Okay.
Yeah, that book is like the script formatting Bible. And I see this a lot where a lot of writers, especially coming in, they don't understand the importance of formatting, because formatting, it's like a first impression when you walk into a room. And if a person is going to read your script and it has all these errors and it has like everything all over the place, they're going to toss it. But if your formatting is on point, you make it harder for them to say no to you.
Is that like the, let's see, screenwriting, the Screenwriter's Bible? Do you like that? Is that pretty
Oh yeah,
comparable, or is that a little
oh yeah, the
different?
Screenwriter's Bible. I recommend that one too, but that one's more like that has everything in there, from formatting to the business of it to the creative side to getting an agent to writing dialogue and action scenes. So if you want to learn everything about screenwriting across the board, definitely get the Screenwriter's Bible. And then if you want to just know about formatting in general, like
Mhm.
everything from flashbacks to telephone conversations, social media posts, get the Hollywood Standard.
Okay.
Yeah, edition 3, because they came out with that, I think last year, the third edition.
Okay. Let's see here. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about today to let our audience know about uh, being a screenwriter or being in the screenwriting space? Is there? I think what I really appreciate about your conversation tonight is telling people there's just more than just TV writing and movie writing, but let's talk a little bit more about your business, because I think that's another
Yeah.
avenue people can go into.
Yeah, and also the reason I took this route is because, for one, I figured out that, oh, this is nice and I actually enjoy this and I'm helping other writers. And it was like an untapped strength I didn't even know I had at the moment, because I had done it so much that I kind of overlooked it. But then I was like, I could make that into a business. And if you have your own business and you build it up, you can set your own schedule, you can have full control, you can direct your day. And I feel like when we're young, especially when we're in our early 20s, we're not thinking about our life plan. We're just thinking about our career plan, which is good. But then we figure out too late, like, oh, I have no life. I'm exhausted. And it's like, it's not even worth it. And then we're like, well, how do I get out of this? And then, we learn a little bit too late. And so that's why I tell a lot of young people, especially in their 20s, like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, you make a lot of money. And I'm like, is that your only reason?
Absolutely.
Because you can make a lot of money, in the entrepreneurial route. It doesn't happen overnight, and neither does screenwriting, but you'll have financial stability in the long run and you'll have peace of mind.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is there's, especially I think in the space right now there needs to be a lot more options for folks
It does.
in terms of coverage and stuff like that, because I think you have some of the big companies right now, and I've heard a lot of not so nice things about how they do coverage and stuff like that. um,
Oh,
just from some other writers I know, they just weren't
yeah.
they weren't really enthusiastic about what they paid for.
Yeah, I've heard some things too, especially from you know, screenwriters of color, how certain people, they would tell them like, oh no, this character wouldn't do that, they wouldn't talk like that, and then the writer's like, well no, it's in my culture, well no, that's wrong, and it's like, no, it's in my culture, and it's like this clash.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
a lot of writers run into that too, and then it further discourages them as well. So they feel like their stories aren't even being given a chance or being heard. And so it can be frustrating.
No, and I think that's where I really appreciate your business going forward, because you can I think you see that and you're able to speak into that a lot more than I think a lot of the traditional places, because they haven't been used to listening to other writers. They're just like, this is what has always worked for us, and they're not
They're
seeing.
not open to change.
Absolutely, and they're not seeing the multitude of different stories out there. I think
Right.
there's a great number of stories that haven't been told, and we need to tell. And I think it's opportunities like what you're doing is to help to give people confidence in order to be able to tell their stories.
Exactly. And to get them clarity, because also, I mean, there can be like horrible ways of giving coverage. Because what I found is horrible coverage and development notes. It's when you just make a blanket statement to the writer and you don't explain, like, this is why I'm saying this. And instead of doing this, you should do XYZ. You should just tell them in that way, not just, oh, I'm not in love with this line of dialogue, but that doesn't tell them anything.
Right.
It's like, that's fine, but I need to know why. Like, tell me why. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, to give people clarity and to give them specificity on why you're saying the feedback they're getting. So I think that's, yeah, that, you know,
exactly.
people just expect, well, they should just know, and they're like, no, you got to tell them what is going on. So
Right. Because the rewrite, it's already daunting anyway, because you're like, oh my gosh, I have to rewrite. But
mhm.
if you have a roadmap and you have instruction and clarity on what to do moving forward, you're good.
Well, that's one question I just was thinking. Do you do an
Hmm.
outline or do you not do an outline?
You mean for my own stuff or for my
Yeah,
clients?
for both.
Oh, I do outlines all the time. Like for my client who I'm ghostwriting his book, I'm outlining his book right now. I
Yeah,
outline everything. I can't not outline because if I don't outline, I'm gonna get lost. I'm gonna be so lost. Like, and I always ask people, it never fails. I'm like, hey, how's it going? They're like, I'm stuck at Act 2. I'm like, did you outline? They're like, no. I'm like, yeah. I figured.
yeah, no, I think that's the one thing too. The At least the program I was going through, that's one of the things he stressed was doing outlines, and
Jeez.
it helped a lot to be able to break through and get your stuff done. So
Yeah, and a lot of young writers, I feel like they're being kind of corrupted because they look at like, people like Steven Spielberg and people like that. And they're the greats. I'm not saying anything bad about them, but they've been in it for years. I mean, you know how long Steven Spielberg has been out here? Years. I
absolutely,
mean, I mean, at this point, he could write anything and it'll get me. You know what I mean? But, people will make this argument. Well, he doesn't outline. I'm like, listen, he's been in this industry for this long. He doesn't have to
no, no,
at this point. But just John or Jane Doe coming into the industry who nobody has ever heard. I mean, no, the average person is going to have to outline or else it's going to be a hot mess.
exactly, exactly. Well, I want to give a plug in for your book.
Okay.
So
Uh,
there's your.
appreciate your support.
Oh yes, you bet, you bet. I really loved the book, and I thought it was really well done. So I'm going to put a plug in. So if you guys haven't read the book yet, take a book of the book. And what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? I will put your information linked in the description of this video.
Uh-huh.
And then, what do you want them to approach you on YouTube or Instagram, or what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Either one. I'm really on Instagram the most. I'm getting back on YouTube because I'm trying to grow like my channel and everything like that. But to access me on Instagram, it's all lowercase. It's Jessica underscore and then write. It's WRITE, and then script,
Gotcha.
SCRIPT.
And when you guys watch the video, you'll see that on the screen. I'll
Okay.
make sure it's on the screen.
That's why I was spelling it, so just so you weren't confused.
Absolutely. So we'll get that on the screen. So Jessica, thank you for your time tonight. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna have you hold for just a second. I'm just gonna hit finish the recording here in just
Oh,
a
sure,
second.
no problem.
So thank you, Jessica, for joining us for tonight. And then we'll, as always, guys, we'll see you in the next video.